Welcome to another episode of Tech Talk Radio. I'm Andy Taylor,
I'm Sean DeWeird.
and we are the show that talks about computers
Technology
and, of course, the internet. It's good to see Sean.
and board games.
Yeah, we got to talk about board games because Sean has just come back from one of the. Is it like the biggest board game convention in the United States?
It's definitely the largest tabletop role-playing game, collectible card game convention in the country for sure.
Right.
But yeah, so it's called Gen Con, right? And it's hosted here in Indianapolis. Brief history: it started in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, and then outgrew that, and then kind of just made its way to Indianapolis in this sometime in the '80s, I think.
Wow.
And my friend Steve and I have been going since 2014. I've always wanted to go since grade school because it was kind of like the thing to do. Go play all the new board games and try out all the new card games and, play Magic the Gathering and those types of things. So my friend Steve and I just went one year and it was like my first major convention, right?
Right.
So
right.
we were so overwhelmed. We had no idea what was going on.
So I remember in high school, when I was going to high school many, many years ago, we played a game called Traveler, which I believe was a form of Dungeons and Dragons. Was that one of the games that you would see covered at something like Gen Con?
Oh yeah, so the big one is Dungeons and Dragons, right? That's kind of what got it started. Right? It was tabletop RPGs, Dungeons and Dragons, right? And there have been many tabletop RPG spin-offs using dice and those things from Dungeons and Dragons. I mean, there's too many to list, but the one of the cool things about Gen Con is you can meet with the developers and play the new tabletop RPGs that are coming out. There are a couple that we played this past weekend. One for those who are listening who are big fantasy novel readers, Brandon Sanderson, right? He wrote a bunch of books called the Stormlight Archives. It's a novels with novellas and other pieces. It's part of his world. They built a tabletop RPG based in the world of Stormlight Archives, the world of Roshan.
Right.
And so they announced that they were going to kickstart that starting I think August 6th. So that's obviously after Gen Con. And so they offered the availability to play it and demo it and get to meet the developers and stuff and talk about the game before it was actually released on Kickstarter. So,
and that's one of the ones you got a chance to try, right?
Yeah. So I got to sit in and do a 4-hour session with that. And I also got invited to the closed beta last week. So I actually got the material before Gen Con. So I actually got to download the material. I printed it out, put it in a binder, was flipping through it, read notes and stuff, made notes and read through it and stuff. And it's pretty cool. It's still a D20 based system. D12. So for those of you who aren't, so for those of you who aren't familiar with the tabletop role playing game world, the D20 system is the D20 is a 20-sided dice. So think of D as dice, and then the number is the number of sides. So D4, 4-sided dice, D6, 6-sided dice, D8, D12, whatever. The D20 system is a system that is based off of rolling D20s or D20, the D20 dice, right, for the majority of the important things that happen in the game.
So now the roll of the dice indicates the type of move you're making.
It can all depend on what you're playing, right? It all depends on what. So like, if you decided you wanted to jump over a chasm to rescue your friend, right? Your friend's stuck in there. You would say, I want to jump over this chasm. And then I would say, okay, you need to, on your character sheet, you have stats like strength, wisdom, intelligence, dexterity, all that stuff. I would say, roll me an athletics check, which is a strength based or dexterity based thing. So you roll the D20.
Right.
Okay. If you say you got a 10, and you might have bonuses based on what you're playing. And then your ability, like, there is what's called the DC, which is the difficulty challenge. That's set based in either the module or the whoever's dungeon mastering or game mastering sets that difficulty. And you either meet or exceed or fail on your roll. Wow. So you roll the D20. So the dice tells the story, right? So you roll the dice and you either succeed or you fail. And then it's up to the narrative, the DM and the player, to role play that scenario. So if it's really, really low, it could be an epic failure. Or if it's really high or you roll a 20 it could be a really crazy good success, and you might add some flair to it. You might do a flip, kind of, you can kind of play it however. So,
And this is all, it's all described. It's not like,
oh yeah, you
yeah,
are constantly talking about the world. You're describing what you're doing. You're describing the environment, the smells, the sights, the sounds, the feels. Like in the it's role playing. Like you
yeah,
are trying to immerse yourself as much in this world as possible. So the benefit of the Stormlight Archives is that the world is built, right? Brandon Sanderson has this huge collection of novels that this world is built in. So this is set in that world. So you can kind of submit yourself to that world, whereas other RPGs are their own worlds, or you're creating your own world based on your own ideas and things like that. Um, like Dungeons and Dragons is the world is the Forgotten Realms, right?
right.
That's the world Dungeons and Dragons is built in. So
Do any of these, Sean, do you ever see any of these cross into, because this is a world where, from what it feels like to me, it's like it's all in the mind. It's creativity. You're constantly
so
using,
yeah, you're constantly thinking, right? So a lot of the times, if you're playing in person, you can use maps and miniatures and things like that. But sometimes if you don't have a map, like your players go completely off kilter, and you're in some scenario where you didn't even think about, you didn't have a map drawn up, you don't have anything. It's called theater of the mind, right? You can
yeah.
just say what you're doing and let your players envision the world in their own minds, and everybody theater of the mind. So it's a great way to just be creative in your own brain. Let your players be creative. Let the GM be creative and play it like that. And it's fun. It's you get to think, you get to escape, you get to build, and it's all built in these big fantasy worlds, which are a ton of fun to play in. And there's every genre you can possibly think of that has tabletop RPGs: horror, fan fiction, historical fiction, recreated history. You could do Civil Wars type stuff. You could do World War One, World War Two. There are all these RPGs built in all these worlds that have different rule sets and different things. So,
Does the game, does it ever end, or is it, this is a kind of an ongoing thing? It's not, you play Candy Crush, and I'm sorry for mentioning Candy Crush, or you play, Monopoly. There is a point where the game finishes. Does this ever end?
it kind of has a natural ending most of the time,
Mhm.
right? A lot of the times it's the groups can't play together much anymore, and they just kind of dissolve and
Right.
start over a new campaign later or whatever. But there is a theoretical limit on level 20 in Dungeons and Dragons is the theoretical limit. There is homebrewed content that goes beyond that, but you get to level 20 in Dungeons and Dragons, you're pretty powerful, right? So there's
Yeah.
not a lot of, it kind of gets, you kind of hit a wall where it's like you can't really go much further without being an actual god in the game, right?
Yeah.
So
You do the wizard strut.
all right, but so like you would play through a campaign, and usually there's like a major objective or a major plot line or a major end game that you're trying to reach, and
Right.
however you get to that end game is kind of the end of that campaign. um I've started and stopped dozens of campaigns over since grade school when I started playing. So
Right. Now, for somebody who has never ever done this before, and they're listening to this, and they're going, well, I played, video games. They may have played World of Warcraft and stuff like that, but this whole board game thing takes on a whole new premise. Is it difficult for somebody who's never done this before to say, I want to give this a try. I want to play this?
I would 10 years ago I would have said yes. It
Right.
would have been a little bit more difficult to get into it unless you knew somebody, or you knew a game store you could go into and they could sit down and set you down with the rules. The Dungeons and Dragons has gone through several iterations, right? They're currently on their fifth edition with the release of a 2024 version of D&D. Like they just released the player handbook for D&D 2024. That's what they're calling it right now.
Right.
I got that at Gen Con. That's the first time they released the book at Gen Con. First public sales were at Gen Con. Um, but their fifth edition is pretty friendly to new players.
Oh, cool.
Um, and if you find somebody that you know is playing D&D and you're interested, just say, "Hey, run me through the starter kit," or run me through a one they call them one shots. Like run me through one campaign. Start me at level 3. Give me an idea of what's going on, and just do it. You just sit down and you role play. You figure it out.
Right. Right.
And that's what it takes. You have to sit and think and play, and you have to do it. You have to have the mindset of this is a game. It's going to take, I have to learn how to play it. There's going to be a learning curve. You're not going to just jump right in and know how to play. But I've taught people how to play.
Yeah.
I think that you and Justin would be able to figure it out. We've talked about doing it where we jump in and we play D&D with you guys. I think it'd be a fun episode to do.
And that's one of the keys is that, yes, it was probably fun at GameCon because, you had your friends with you, you're in person, but you don't have to be in person to actually have a game. You could set it up where you do it by a stream.
So for the last, I would say for the last 7 or 8 years, it started going to a virtual tabletop, right? There are many third-party, they call them VTTs, virtual tabletops, Roll20, Foundry. There's a bunch of these virtual tabletops where you can log in, build maps, put tokens, add effects, add music, add lighting, all this stuff, and share that all with your players, so that what I'm seeing as the GM is different than what you're seeing as the player. So I can still surprise you with things you can't see around corners, those types of things. So Roll20 is the one that I use for all of my games. It has been the easiest to use. And then Dungeons and Dragons. So there was a company called D&D Beyond.
Right.
They took the character sheets that for Dungeons and Dragons you would normally write out everything, and they virtualized them. So you could just put all your stats in there. And then they licensed the content from Wizards of the Coast, and you could go in, you could put your spells in there, you could put your skills in there, you could put your weapons in there, you could homebrew your own content, and they made this really awesome interface so you could just log in and see all your stuff, see your character sheets. And then they tied it all in, and then Wizards of the Coast bought them. Hasbro bought D&D Beyond. So now they're part of Wizards. And they're growing that into their own 3D virtual tabletop system, which will roll out in the next little while. But
so what you're saying is something like Meta, that you'd be able to wear the Meta glasses and experience something in 3D
at some point in time in the near future. I expect that to happen. I don't have any experience with that, but I foresee that happening in the near future where you could sit down and experience the virtual world as you're, in whatever game fashion you might come up with. I'm sure it's coming, more full immersion virtual tabletop game.
You know what I can't understand though, Sean, is you look at Gen Con, and again, it's really I'm not going to say it's a niche, but you've got, tabletop RPGs. Why did E3 fail? Well, E3 is done. Why you look at Gen Con, you look at E3, you would think, okay, there's more people that are going to be involved and enjoying what E3 brings to the table, where you bring, PlayStation, Xbox, Nintendo Switch, PC games for the Mac, games for Meta, and yet they're not doing it anymore.
I honestly don't have an answer to that, right? I just know that the community around board games. So I keep saying the last decade, right? Because that's about how long I've been going to Gen Con. 2014 was so this was my 9th year going.
Oh, wow.
In a row. Outside of COVID, or obviously we didn't go during COVID, but the community around board games is, everybody enjoys playing board games. Yeah. What people don't realize is there's more to board games than Monopoly, the Game of Life, and Uno. Right? There are thousands and thousands of board games.
Yeah.
Based off of other pop culture things, off of other scenarios, off of anything you can think about. Board games you can think of. There are thousands and thousands of board games.
I think there's even websites dedicated to people who are launching their board games, right?
So Kickstarter is a big one. A lot of board games get their start at Kickstarter. Board Game Arena. If you're interested in playing a lot of very popular board games, boardgamearena.com is a website you can go on and play virtual versions of more of some of the more popular titles.
Right.
If you're interested in finding a game that you might like, a board game, Board Game Geek.
BoardGameGeek.
BGG. BoardGameGeek.com.
Okay.
It's probably the most sought after place to find information on board games. You can put your collection in there. You can price stuff out. You can buy. You can sell. They write reviews. So if you wanted to see like what was all about Gen Con, like the top 50 games at Gen Con. They have a list. They had a booth there. They do live streams. Like, there is a whole culture around board games, tabletop RPGs, trading card games.
Wow. They're selling stuff there too, right? And I did you not make a purchase or two?
uh,
How did that go?
because if I talk about it here, Caitlin will know how much I really spent.
I can't.
No, to be honest, right? So to be honest, right? What's cool about Gen Con is you can buy, you can sell, right? So
Yeah.
what I've done the last couple times is I play a lot of Magic the Gathering. And that's
Okay.
that's a collector's card game, right? But over the years, you collect more than what you play with, right? You collect just a bunch of stuff. You're like, oh, I've been playing for 20 years. I have a ton of stuff. I went through and parsed out valuable cards from my collections that I don't play with,
Right.
and sold them for cash at Gen Con this year. And then turned that cash around and spent it on things that I wanted to buy.
Cool.
So I went specifically this year to play mostly the tabletop RPGs, right? The Stormlight Archives one. There is a D&D podcast called Critical Role,
Right.
that they made their own. They've been playing D&D 5th edition, but they made their own tabletop RPG called Daggerheart, which is a completely different system than D&D. And we played it, and it was incredible.
Wow.
So they're currently in open beta, so you can go on to the Daggerheart website, download the materials, play it for free, check it out, and they're going to be releasing the actual released content sometime in 2025. So I'm excited for that one.
Right.
There's Call of Cthulhu. There's
I've heard of that one.
Candle. There's a couple. There's a bunch. There's so many, right? There's ones based off of like Stargate SG-1. There's some based off of being in space, Starfinder, Pathfinder. I mean, there's so many. Is
there any based around the world of Alien? You know, you get
yes, there is. There's actually a new one that just came out called the Alien the RPG.
Oh wow, cool.
So there are literally any universe you could think of. There's likely a tabletop RPG based on it.
Wow. Now, if listeners would ever want to go to this Gen Con, it happens once a year, and it happens in Indianapolis. I remember when you went last year.
Yep. So it's usually the last weekend of July into the beginning of August. So this year it was August 1st through the 4th or something like that.
Yeah.
Next year it's July 31st to August 3rd. It starts on Thursday morning, ends on Sunday afternoon. Steve and I drove down Wednesday night. We got in Indianapolis like 1 a.m. Thursday morning. Went to sleep, got up at 7. And we were there from 7 until like midnight 30. Came back to the Airbnb, went to sleep. We're back up at 7, right back at it for another 12 hours.
That's pretty amazing.
Rinse and repeat until Sunday at what, 2 o'clock when we drove home.
And you never get bored through the whole thing because
there's so there is downtime, right? You're gonna have downtime, but you could schedule you could schedule 24 hours of content every day you're there if you wanted to.
Wow.
The place is open 24 hours. There are events running 24 hours. It all depends on what you want to do, right? It depends on if, obviously there's not as many at nighttime, but if you wanted to play Magic the Gathering at 2 o'clock in the morning, you just go to the hall and say, I want to play in a pickup game of Magic the Gathering. And as soon as they have 8 people, you go, it fires.
I remember, Sean, when I lived in Orange County, California, not that far from LA, we went to the big science fiction and fantasy convention in Los Angeles. And, it was a huge convention. People do the cosplay and the whole bit. And it was a lot of fun to check out. But they had movies 24/7. They had like one, you could go. And that was the first time I ever saw Rocky Horror Picture Show. And I remember I walked in, I got hit with a piece of toast because that was during the toast scene. And I'm like, what the heck is this?
Rocky Horror Picture Show is a great movie.
Right. So, and I mean, they were doing these all night, all these movies, horror films, science fiction films. And it was because you had a captive audience that loved that genre. Now, I'm looking at like one of the things you bought, and I'm thinking, this is huge. This is pretty amazing. And if you want to see photos of it or the video available up on our blog.techtalkradio.com, what the heck is that?
So this is a game called Everdell. It's made by Starlight Games.
That's a
It's
game.
well, this is the whole collection, right? So
Right.
Everdell is a series of games, collector's editions, expansions, etc. I played it for the first time last year at Gen Con. I actually played the children's version
Mhm.
last year at Gen Con. I bought the children's version to play it. Um, and then was like, this game's awesome. Then actually learned how to play the base game and said, this is my big purchase for the year. Right. So this big
Right.
box set is everything Everdell has been
Wow.
printed since. So this was my big purchase from this year. So it's a bunch of content in here. Um, there's a ton of pieces in here. Like it's a whole you build a whole world, you build a whole big tree out of it. It's a worker placement game that uses resources to buy, and you basically build a big village. It's really an incredible game. I can't really do it justice by talking about it. You kind of just have to play it. But it's
Is that
Everdell
one?
by
Is that one that Justin and I would be able to play from our remote locations?
They do have an online version of it. I think the app costs $10.
Oh, that's not bad, right?
But yeah, no, this is not one that is available to play outside of Starlight Games, like their own property.
Yeah,
I can't imagine it won't come to that at some point.
it looks
Like,
pretty amazing though.
but it is. So it's actually really heavy. I think it weighs like 22 pounds or something.
And what will somebody find in that? Boards, the dice.
So if I split it around to the backside and I can hold
All
it
right.
up. So it's
Oh
got
my
like the
gosh, look at that.
boards,
Yeah,
trays for all the pieces. It's all modular, so it all fits in here. All
wow.
the cards, the boards, the dice, the figures, the rule book, all that stuff.
Now, if
Uh,
anybody's thinking, okay, what has this got to do with tech? Think about it. The characters from Big Bang Theory, Sheldon, they played D&D.
they
I
played D and
remember.
D. They played board
Yeah.
games. They played 3D chess. They played all sorts of stuff. Warlords of Ka, if you remember that from the show.
Which one?
Uh, Warlords of Ka.
Uh-huh.
It's a card game that they play. Um, that Sheldon, uh, at the beginning of the series, if you haven't watched it, beginning of
Right.
the series, Sheldon's mortal enemy is Will Wheaton.
Yes.
And they end up playing
It's
for
right.
something related, but they made a game in the show called Warlords of Ka'a. I think you can buy it. You might
Right.
be able to buy it. Maybe not now because the show's been off the air for a while. But um, being a nerd, right? Everybody loves like most people love being nerds, but
Yeah.
people in technology are often associated with being nerds.
Yes.
We are those
We
people.
are. Yeah, we are. We are
I
those.
just have I just happen to be nerdy about board games.
Was
But I
Will
also
Wheaton,
I also bought a bunch of other stuff too. That's not the only board game I bought.
was Will Wheaton in that episode too? I think he was, wasn't he?
He's a recurring character in the entire
Yeah,
series.
he is. You know what else has come back? And I don't know. And I definitely want to give this a mention. And I wanted to mention it last week, but forgot about it on Max. For those that have HBO Max, Silicon Valley. And I don't know if you ever watched that, Sean, when that was, oh my gosh, if you get a chance, you got to watch that. It's about a startup, a tech startup, and all of the things they had to go through to get this startup to happen. And it's a comedy. It's a short, each episode, I think is like maybe 30 minutes. And it's just hilarious. If you get a chance to check that one out, that show, which was a limited series, is now back on HBO Max. Not new episodes, just the old stuff, but I think you'll like it.
So you asked what did that have to do with tech, right? So
Yeah.
Gen Con also has their own YouTube channel called Gen Con TV. And they post a lot of stuff on there. And they actually do a lot of live playthroughs and they talk to a lot of people in the industry. And they were live streaming all throughout Gen Con and doing other events. So check them out, Gen Con TV on YouTube. And there are a lot of podcasts out there that do live play Dungeons and Dragons or Pathfinder or other
Is there a
tabletop
Twitch?
RPGs. Oh, it's all over the place. Twitch, YouTube, Critical Role actually made their own streaming platform called Beacon.
Right?
So if you check out Beacon, you'll be able to see their content there. They're trying to pull themselves away from the giants of streaming, right? They're trying to pull themselves away from the YouTube and the Twitch to pull all of that content into themselves so they can have a little bit more control over their
Right.
ads and all that stuff, which is to be expected because they've become a multi-million-dollar a year corporation based off of playing Dungeons and Dragons.
Wow.
And then they're not the only ones, right? There are other celebrity D&D podcasts or Pathfinder podcasts or other tabletop RPG podcasts that have almost cult-like followings that can garner 70 to 80,000 views a week when they do their live
All right.
live podcasts.
So where should somebody start? Like they're listening right now. Go, I want to do this. Where do they start? Could they go to a shop that sells maybe, D&D type games, that type of thing, and just ask the clerk?
Yeah, so most local game stores will have some sort of D&D content. My suggestion to you, and this is what I did because I played D&D back in high school,
Right.
and it's very different than what it was. Like if you played D&D back in the 80s, the 70s and 80s, it's a completely different experience now, right? And you may have bad experiences from that based off of all the the
Who you're playing
satanic
with, yeah.
whatever, like but who was playing and all that stuff.
Yeah.
It got a reprise when Stranger Things came out and they were playing D&D in that game. Like they kind of got a little bit of a bump from that. But if you're seriously interested in at least trying it, go to your local game store. They sell a box set called the D&D starter set. It's got a rule book, it's got pre-generated characters in it, it's got dice, it's got maps. You can literally crack open the box with 3 or 4 of your friends and play.
Now,
And it tells you how to play. It tells you what to do. It tells you, hey, these are the characters you should play. Here's how you should play them. Here's what they can do. It really lines it all out for you. And I ran that at Gen Con in 2016.
Right.
I just bought the box and said, you know what? Let's play it. Let's figure it out. Let's play D&D 5e. I haven't played this version because I hadn't played since version 3.5. So back in the late 90s.
Yeah.
Cracked it open. We sat at a table. We found an open table at Gen Con and we just played. I drew it all out on a wet, dry erase map that I had bought, like a big grid map that I bought. We just drew it out with markers, and it was so much fun.
Now, is this something that maybe a husband and wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, could play? Could 2 people, or do you really need to have 4?
No,
I remember we used to play with like 6.
You could definitely do 2 people. They make environments and worlds for 2 people. There are some other versions of D&D Mayhem, which is a card-based game that can play around in the D&D world. There are 2-player options that exist, but there's nothing stopping you from just you and I playing or husband and wife playing or, but the benefit is, right, you get 1 or 2 people involved and say you can't get together every week in person.
Right.
Well, you just pop it online to Roll20. Now you can play from wherever. I play in a weekly Wednesday night with some of my friends from high school. Right. A couple, I've played with my brother and his family. I've played with other friends that have just wanted to play. And it's just, as long as you can have a common interest in that, you can find a place to play it online.
I'm wondering at Gen Con, did they show, because it was probably about 3 months ago, somebody was marketing a die, dice, but it was digital, and you could, would light up and the whole bit, and then it would land. So you didn't roll the dice; it would just be on the middle, in the middle of the table, and it would light up, and then you would have your whatever you rolled there.
Yeah, I mean, you can see those, right? They have those types of things, right? But most people like prefer the actual tactile rolling of the dice in their hands and on the table. You could hear it; they're clinking together in the dice tray. Those types of things. The big thing this year was blacklight reactive dice, so dice that have paint or illumination or things in them that react to blacklight. So if I picked up, actually, after the break, I'll go get my dice because these blue lights will actually make them react pretty well. But they actually sold a dice tray with blacklight LEDs in them.
Oh, cool.
So you could roll the dice in there and see it. But I mean, you can never have enough dice. Don't let anybody ever tell you can have enough dice. This is not true. So you could buy all of your supplies there: dice, mats, books, maps. I don't know. Gen Con is just a nerd haven where I spent way too much money.
Out of all of the links that you told us, which is one we should definitely check out?
If you're interested in D&D and you know somebody that can do 5e 5th edition, D&D Beyond.
D&D Beyond. All right.
That's going to give you access to the source books. That's going to give you access to the character builder, maps, homebrew, whatever. If you're interested in the board games, boardgamearena.com or boardgamegeek.com to get an idea of what type of board game might work for you.
All right, we're going to take a break. We come back. So imagine, Sean, You got that nice studio down there. You've got everything, and you decide you want to get a big TV. How about a 115-inch television?
That
Yeah,
would fit right about there.
I never forget. I listened to a talk show once. I was driving into work in the morning, and I heard this guy on the radio, and he was an older man, and he I guess he wasn't very tech savvy, and somebody had talked about an 85-inch television, and the guy said, "My God, an 85-inch television! How big of a wall do you need for that?" And I remember looking at the radio saying, 85 inches. Well, if you want to get this 115-inch TV, you'll be surprised at what comes with it. But the price tag be a little scary. I'll tell you more about that when we come back. Also, a warning if you're thinking about building a new system with Intel processing, that's on the way. I'm Andy Taylor.
I'm Sean DeWeird.
You can find us on the World Wide Web at techtalkradio.com. We'll be right back. So it was recently announced that TCL, which is a manufacturer of televisions and whatnot, they are going to be putting out a 115-inch QD mini LED TV. Now, you know, we have Justin, I know, has talked about his big TV. Sean, you have a pretty big screen. Mine is a 55-inch television
My screen here in the basement is 122 inch.
because it's a projection.
Yeah, I have a BenQ projector, 1080p HDR projector.
Right. So you get that full, huge experience. Well, TCL putting out this 115-inch QD mini LED TV decided they needed to add something to get people to buy it. So when you buy this television, it comes with a ticket to the Super Bowl.
Oh,
Customers,
why are you buying the TV then? Aren't you buying the TV to watch the Super Bowl?
right? Customers could also choose to attend a Hollywood film premiere, or, and I love this, or a tech conference. So I guess, you go to CES, maybe that's the deal. I remember when Panasonic rolled out I want to say it was a 100-inch television. Me and our buddy Jim, who's no longer with us, we were standing there as Panasonic unveiled this television, which had to be professionally installed in your home. And we were just thinking, why? It's just so enormous. But 115-inch. Now, if you want to buy this TCL television, though, it will cost you a bit, $20,000. And if you
$20,000.
$20,000,
That's more than like a Kia Forte.
you can buy what, a 55-inch TV now. It's okay. It's not a QD mini LED, but you can buy a 4K, 55-inch television.
$150.
That much? You think it's that low? I was going to say more like
200,
400,
maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could buy TVs for dirt cheap.
Yeah. Kind of interesting though how they're working on their marketing on that. Now, speaking of marketing, Intel has had a little problem with their marketing. And it's got a lot of people scared that decided they wanted to be the first and wanted to have the best. And those that are wanting to upgrade now are looking at alternatives. This involves what, their 13th and 14th gen processors.
So yeah, any CPU that supports a 13 or 14 generation of the CPU is suffering from a major power issue. It's kind of what do they call it? The microcode.
Right.
Okay, that's confusing to me, and I just looked this up because I didn't even know what that meant. Microcode is basically the CPU telling how much energy to send to every net, whatever, every silicone piece of silicon in the thing, right? It's sending too much power to all those things, and the longer it does it, the more power degradation you're going to see in your CPU.
Right.
And it's every 13th generation and every 14th generation CPU. That's it. All of them have this issue.
Yeah.
So
now there was a fix, right, that involved I think a BIOS patch on the boards that were supporting these processors that may be able to circumvent that. But if the processor and they said they were going to put out a fix, right?
Yeah. So they announced what day was this article written? 23rd. So late July, they announced a fix that should be available mid-August.
Mhm.
So basically, it's a BIOS update probably to most major motherboards. So even, but is your are they gonna push out BIOS updates for every version of motherboard that they
Yep.
Asus? There's so many versions of motherboards. Like that's a lot of code to rewrite to fix this problem. But um, it's crazy because it's so many 13th and 14th. That's a lot.
And the crazy thing is Intel is still marketing their 13th and 14th gen processors. And, I'm concerned because I've built systems and I built one with 14th gen. And as far as I know, they've had issues yet, but I'm going to have to go as soon as this BIOS update is going to be available. I have to go look at it because this could be a problem, but they're still selling them now. And now what Intel is doing is saying, well, what we're going to do is we're going to extend the warranty on the processors. I think by another year. I'm not sure how so those that are nervous about buying a 13, 14 gen processor now will have that extra security.
Yeah, so Tom's Hardware is a great web resource if you're ever
Yeah.
interested in tech. They're reporting that the bug causes irreversible degradation of the impacted processors. Basically, it's frying the processor from the inside out. It's too much electricity. It's frying the circuits.
Right.
And that the fix that they're going to push won't fix the problem once it's happened. Right? If
It's already damaged, it's damaged.
if it's already damaged, it's not going to fix the damaged parts of the processor. So, I mean, it's really hard to say why Intel hasn't issued a recall.
Yeah.
And said,
well, you remember one time they've done that before. They did that. It was one of their Pentium chips. If you remember that they did a recall, and that's what happened. Eventually, all of them had to be sent back. And I'm kind of wondering if they're concerned of how this would affect their bottom line in this case.
well, I think there's too many machines. I think they would like. My thoughts are right. Okay, how many places are running these higher end 14 gens? It's like how many systems are running these, and how many systems these are supporting. They're not going to recall this because they would lose so much stake in the AI market, right?
Yeah.
All of that, yeah, they have their professional and CPUs and stuff, but there are probably a lot of systems supported that are running 14th or 13th or 14th gen CPUs that if they recall, that's gonna it's gonna be so bad for Intel if they had to recall.
Yeah. Now what I have seen is their 12th gen, which is a very capable processor. Depending on the board you get, the processor actually can do very well. They have the KF, the 12 700, I think it is. They have the KF model, and then they have the K model. Those are actually going up in price now. And I think it's because of that uncertainty that people are saying, well, I'm just going to go ahead 12 because the system we were going to do in the here in the studio, we ended up doing Ubuntu. We're probably going to try Linux Mint 22. That system may just stay the way it is. It's got the i7 6600, but the other system has to be replaced. It's too old. I mean, we're going back to an i3. So in that one, I already got the board for it. And I was thinking, I'll just go with a 12. 12th generation is fine. And I don't have to go with 13 or 14. And
Yeah,
now
so
even
it's
more
only
so now.
it's only the 13th and the 14th generation. There's been no mention of the 12th generation processors, including the new 12900K, suffering from the same issue. But so for those of you who are techie, right? So the 12th gen processors use the Alder Lake architecture.
Right.
The 13th and 14th chip gens use the Raptor Lake, which is basically just a different architecture of the chip. So,
Right. Now these new AI systems that are available, they don't even use Intel, do they? I mean, they're using a completely different Snapdragon.
They're using
Yeah.
all sorts of stuff. I mean, everybody's running the top of the line stuff to get as much horsepower out of these chips to do all of the AI stuff. I'm sure some AI stuff is built on the Intel. I'm sure, AMD has probably built stuff on it. I'm sure they're all building stuff off AI. So
Yeah. Have you? Let me ask you. When's the last time you replaced your mouse?
my mouse,
Yeah.
3 years ago, I'm
Okay.
running the 12 button Razer Naga Trinity.
Oh, cool.
which is RGB, lights up, does all that stuff. Um,
Right.
and
Have you,
it's the second one of these I've owned
is it
because
wired, wireless?
it is wired. Yeah. Uh, I had a wired Razer Orichi.
Right.
They made a wireless gaming mouse for a while. I had that for my laptop for a while. Uh, but I preferred wired mice.
Yeah. Kind of like, I like the wireless, but, we got the, trying to remember the model number. It was a Logitech mouse and it has RGB colors on it and it drains the battery pretty quick. You have the colors and, it's all lit up and the whole bit. And that's the downside to when you have all those add-ons to it if you're using wireless. Well, the CEO of Logitech, Hanneke Faber, or Faber, is the CEO of the company and was doing an interview and talked about the idea of a forever mouse. And a lot of people have been talking about this because imagine, and you and I, we've talked about subscription models for everything. I don't like the software subscription model, how we went from, I could own the Adobe software, I could own the master suite. Now you have to do a subscription. How I used to be able to buy QuickBooks, and maybe hold on to it for about 3, 4 years. Then if I wanted a new feature, I would buy a new version of QuickBooks, generally pretty expensive, but it wasn't that bad. And then they went to a subscription model that was rather pricey. I mean, getting to about $300 a year. It's like, why? Why? I had software I would pay $500 and it would last me for 3 years. That's much better. Well, now in this interview, they talked about the idea of a forever mouse, which would be hardware that you would basically pay one time and then a subscription. And if that mouse ever failed, you would get a new mouse because you're paying a subscription. Similar to what they've done with iPhones. If you buy a phone from Apple, you always get the updates, paying a little extra premium on that. Is this something you think that would kick off? Do you think I'm thinking it's too competitive a marketplace with Razer and Crucial, Corsair, I should say, and Logitech.
There's gonna be a revolt at some point.
Yeah,
At some point, there's gonna be too much. Like you're gonna make subscriptions for everything. Like make my monitor subscriptions. Like, well, you can only use your monitors from 9 p.m. to 9 a.m. if you once you pay $20 a month. I mean, the
yeah,
idea of a subscription mouse is absurd.
yeah,
Hardware degrades, hardware fails, hardware
right.
upgrades. It's like uh, it just doesn't make sense. And
Well, didn't we see back?
I think some places took it out of context.
Yeah,
Right. The interview, if you want to watch it, it's on the Decoder Pod, which is the Verge's
yeah,
webcast. You could see that she is serious. Like she's like, I could see a subscription model happening for a mouse, and you can tell that she's sincere in her notions that, yeah, I could see that happening down the road. And
wow,
that's scary.
yeah.
Like, I don't want a subscription mouse. It does one function.
Wasn't there a backlash to HP and their subscription?
Oh God, yeah. I mean, I have an HP printer,
Right,
right? I have an HP laser printer that I bought from Costco. It works fantastic. I don't have a subscription for it. I don't need one because
right,
I didn't want that. But you can pay HP subscriptions for ink. You get ink every month based on a set priority if you want. But HP has notoriously been known to say, all right, you cancel your subscription, can't use your ink.
yeah,
Cancel your subscription, can't print.
yeah.
Cancel your
Printer.
subscription, can't scan, can't fax, whatever, right? Uh, and that seems silly, but people have to realize like this is not always on the corporations. Okay, people sign up for this stuff.
Right,
You are signing up for a subscription. You know that. You go in knowing without reading the fine print, that's on you. Right? If you go in and don't read the fine print and get mad when you cancel your subscription, your printer can't print anymore, that's on you.
yeah,
That's on
exactly.
you for buying and enabling these companies because they're making money hand over fist because they're selling you a $30 printer with a $30 a month subscription that they're making hand over fist money on because you print 4 pages a month.
Yeah, you have to remember that too. Some people will say, I don't understand this because this piece of technology may be, X amount of dollars, but a printer, generally you find a printer, it's not that expensive because they got you on the ink.
They get
And
you in the ink and now the subscription.
exactly. And so that is something to think about, but it's something that was brought up. And again, you could see that on the Verge's YouTube page. We get to take another quick break. We come back. We got more great tech to talk to you about. I'm Andy Taylor.
I'm Sean DeWeird. Find us on Facebook, Tech Talkers.
We'll be right back.
So we are pulling out of the listener hat to rate for this part of the show.
The listener, is it like a big rabbit hat?
Big rabbit hat.
Yes.
Call us, text us, email us, Facebook us, whatever. We'll read your questions on the air
Yeah.
and hopefully get you the answers you want.
Our email address is techguys@techtalkradio.com. And this is how we got these emails. Well, one of them was from Facebook, but I thought I'd let you go ahead and share those with us.
So Cecilia in Tucson
Right.
is a listener, and she says, my son has a Nintendo Switch and also his own Chromebook.
Ooh,
He
nice.
wants to stream the Switch to play to the Chromebook and share some of the gameplay.
Oh.
I know nothing of how to do this kind of stuff. Do you guys know how this can be done?
Wow. I don't even have a Switch.
Yeah. Hey, I have a Switch and it's
Right.
fun. It's fun. You're not doing it on a Chromebook.
Really?
I'm just gonna put it out there right now. You could try.
Right.
Chromebook is its own OS. It has its own issues with running any type of streaming software. You're just not going to get the horsepower you need to do what you want to do well out of Chromebook. You
Okay.
can try, and if you want to try it, download OBS, which is a free open. It's called Open Broadcaster Software. It's a free download. You're going to need to buy a peripheral to get the output of the Switch onto the computer.
That'd be like what, a capture card?
You can buy a capture card. So they make HDMI to USB dongles that you can buy. Google them look them up on Amazon. They're relatively inexpensive.
Elgato makes a bunch of stuff for that kind of stuff.
Yeah, Elgato is great if you want to pay a little bit too much money for stuff. You can find them much cheaper and for the same quality on Amazon for nameless brands. But you're going to need a HDMI to USB adapter or some other form of capture card. You're going to need the software. You're going to need to have a decent internet connection. And you're going to need to have some video knowledge, right? You're going to need to know, a lot of times you can set it up for automatic and it should run fine, but you're going to need to have a Twitch channel or a YouTube channel or a Facebook gaming channel or a Kick, whatever the new streaming places are, right? So,
right. I'm wondering if he wants to stream some of his gameplay, could he run into DRM with the music from the game or the game itself, the video from the game?
No, I mean, maybe. I haven't done a lot of game streaming. More often than not, live play is kind of covered under fair use.
Right.
You'd have to look into that. But here's the thing. People don't realize how much work it actually takes to stream content on the internet.
Yeah.
Like everybody thinks, oh, I can just plug my computer in and stream.
Right.
Okay. Well, if you don't do any marketing, you're not going to get anywhere. Right. Mm-hmm. If you're not promoting yourself, you're not going to get anywhere. If you're not streaming on a consistent basis, you're not going to get anywhere. If you're not streaming content that's popular, you're not going to get anywhere. If he wants to stream his own stuff for his 3 Facebook friends and his mom on the internet, that's totally doable.
Right.
But it's a lot of work. This podcast takes a lot of work, and it's just a radio show, and people just don't realize. They're like, oh, I want to be a YouTuber, or I want to, like, you have to have a unique idea. You have to have the wherewithal to continuously create content for that idea without it becoming mundane and a job, because that's what it is. It is a job. You are working.
You mentioned the content, and I think that's an important thing that we're seeing now too, is so you stream, right? Fine. But reels, whether you're creating reels for Instagram or Facebook or, any of the other sources that are out there, creating content aside from what you're streaming and allowing people to find you that way. So if they see something they like, oh, cool, I'm going to go check that out.
Multi-platforming, right? It's like it's impossible unless you get a niche market, or you hit it big, or you get retweeted, or you get rated by a popular streamer, and all of a sudden you have 30,000 people watching your stream and you have no idea what's going on, right? It's so hard to get popular streaming.
Yeah, and a lot of people want to do that now. All right, so basically, what should she do? Should she Should she
If
invest in a better laptop or a
I would
desktop?
say I would tell her to invest in a better laptop. Doesn't have to be the fanciest of fancy laptops, right? But it's gonna have to be, probably $1,000 laptop to
Like a
do
rock?
bare minimum
Yeah.
right? Um, Something that's gonna have enough horsepower to stream because you could stream all day long at 2.5 megabit 720p stream, but it's gonna look like
Yeah.
crud and it's not
Yeah.
going to get you anywhere. If you're looking to do 1080p, 10 to 15 meg, you're going to need something that's going to do it. Plus, you need the bandwidth to do it. So you're going to need to be likely hardwired.
Right.
Wireless is okay if you want to suffer a little bit on your quality. You can push 5 to 6, 7 meg across Wi-Fi and make it look good. It just all depends on your circumstances and what the content is.
So when it comes time for her son to stream, is mom not going to be able to watch her shows on the streaming channels?
Yeah, right. So if you don't have good internet at home,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden your son's streaming 1080p at 7 or 8 meg, that could if that's eating up your entire bandwidth, you're not going to be able to watch your shows.
Yeah. So you think about that before you go out and buy that laptop for him.
But I would recommend having a beefy laptop.
Mhm.
A MacBook Pro would do it too, but those are pricey, right?
Yeah.
A capture card. So you take the HDMI out of the dock of the Switch into that. You just got to have a little. It's a little bit of trial and error to figure out what you want to do, but it's
But have
easy
some
enough.
fun with it.
Yeah, it's easy enough to point an OBS encoder to Twitch or YouTube or Facebook. It's really easy.
Right.
There's a lot of I mean, there's hundreds and hundreds of guides. You can find them on YouTube to watch guides. You could watch somebody live streaming how to do live streaming. Um, but
Great.
and there's ways to do it, and if you're interested in it, give it a try, right? But I wouldn't recommend trying it with a Chromebook. That's just
Right.
you're just setting yourself up for frustration
Right.
trying to do it on a Chromebook that has baseline minimum required processing power.
All right. Here's one from Carrie in Anaheim, California. It was sent to us via our Facebook page. She told us she's living in a trailer on some property, but can't seem to get a good enough net signal. She wants to use her phone as a hotspot for her Roku TV. And she wants to know, is really that the best way to do it? And, I know you get out on the road quite a bit. You're a road warrior. Is that a good way to do it? Is the
Well,
hotspot
so
for the TV?
yeah, the hotspot of your phone could work if you have good cell phone service, right?
Right.
If you have good 5G coverage or even 4G LTE. But if you're rural, right,
Right.
your only options are either microwave internet or satellite internet.
That'd
Right?
be
Those
like
are
what
your
Starlink.
Yeah, they come by various names. Like Starlink is obviously SpaceX's platform using the mini CubeSats in low orbit, and that has been widely successful around the world. And they just actually increased their capacity and decreased their plan pricing, so you can actually get it a little bit more affordable. Starlink is very good for what it is. Obviously, there's some reliability issues during like any platform that uses satellites, right?
Right.
Heavy rain, weather, snow, right? You have to be mindful of that. But you can probably find like HughesNet
Mhm.
or something like that. I
Or
know
even
there's
I was thinking Solis, which is the hotspot that combines different carriers into one's.
Oh
Just
yeah,
as
you could buy a like a Cradle Point or a bridge router that will take SIM cards from multiple carriers and provide you with phone coverage and bond them together to give you the
right.
best internet out of that. Don't expect to do any gaming or any latency driven applications with that, right? Streaming, it buffers onto your computer and it plays that way. That's going to be fine. You're not doing any gaming off those types of things.
All right. We got to take another quick break. We'll come back with more of Tech Talk Radio. I'm Andy Taylor.
I'm Sean DeWeird. Find us on X at Tech Talk Radio.
We call Sean our wise guy, only because he's the one who introduced us to Wyze. That's WYZE. They're a company that makes some products that are pretty inexpensive and actually pretty good products.
Yeah, so I have a bunch of their security cameras, and if you've listened to the show, you would know that. I have a dozen of them, I think now. I don't
Right.
even know. I lost track. All these light bulbs that you see on here are Wyze. They're Wyze smart bulbs. Um, they finally they haven't, surprisingly, in the last 3 weeks ish,
Yeah.
probably haven't pushed a new product on us,
They've been
which
really
is which
quiet.
is which has been surprising. They did upgrade their app is coming. Their new version of their app 3, the third 3.0 version of their app is coming, which should streamline some things. Dark mode.
Yeah.
Thank the maker for dark mode. Dark mode is enabled immediately on every device I ever own. It's going to allow you to do some favoriting. It's going to allow you to customize your home screen. It's going to allow you to set more rules and automations. It's just going to make things a little more streamlined. So the app is coming. I only have the version 2.4 or whatever the current version is, so I don't think it's available yet.
Yeah, version 3 is what it's going to be called, right?
Version 3.0, yeah. Wise 3.0. So
where can we find out more about Wise?
Wise.com. Right on their homepage, you can just click on the app 3.0. There's a little widget there for it.
All right. And before we leave, website of the week, we like to give you one, but honestly, we decided Gen Con's couple of websites. We're going to mention them again. Who should they be?
So just check out gencon.com, right? Just see if you want, if you're interested in Gen Con at all, or seeing what it's all about, gencon.com. Check out Board Game Geek if you're interested in board games. That'll give you an idea of, you can kind of search by genre, all that stuff. Board Game Arena, which is where you can play virtual tabletop games. And then D&D Beyond and Roll20.net are the two D&D ones I would recommend if you're interested in playing D&D online. That's for D&D 5th edition. Roll20.net is for any platform. It's just a virtual tabletop system that can incorporate any RPG platform.
We'll have these links on our blog. Sean, it's great to see you. Hopefully we'll be able to get together next week, talk about some more things like, an update that you need to make if you're a Windows 10 user and you haven't done an update since 2018, or your system may just stop working. So we'll tell you more.
Hopefully we'll see. We'll see. Maybe those people running the Intel, the Intel processors will get their update soon.